Yoga is a means to bring harmony to the body, mind, and spirit. My name's Daniel Bradley, and this is In 4 Weeks, where every month I take on a new challenge and a new topic to make myself either healthier, wealthier, or wiser. And this week is specifically really reflecting on and experimenting with my yoga experience. And so I'm going to reflect on each day, a question and a quote. And the quotes are from a book that I've been reading, Light on Yoga. It's essentially the modern Bible of yoga, and it's a great read if you want to check out the link below. Last month was my digital detox, where I disconnected from a lot of content creation, content consumption. I got this dumb phone called a light phone that only essentially does text messages and phone calls, and I thought it was a great tool to use. I've since stopped using that, and I'm holding on to it as my phone away from phone is the way that I'm considering it as a resource to be able to turn on and use and just pop the SIM card in if I need to unplug for a weekend, but still have that ability to make phone calls just in case and to be able to stay connected. So it's a nice midpoint and something that you could possibly check out as well. And again, the link's down there if you want to check out what light phone I'm using. And I've reviewed a bunch of them if you want to look at older videos from last month about my whole experience as I worked through the bugs and the ups and downs of having a phone with basically no internet connection. And so as I reflect on these different days, again, it'll be a quote from that book, a little bit of reflection, sort of a journaling of my own thoughts and something for you to take away, and then an application question, something for if you would like to take this day-to-day journey through yoga with me. I've taken these questions that I've made and turned them into something that you can really dig into for yourself. And so this would be something that if you wanted to crack open a journal and journey with me, it's a great opportunity to do that. So once again, my name's Daniel Bradley, and this is In 4 Weeks, where every month I take on a new challenge and a new topic to make myself either healthier, wealthier, or wiser. This month is all about yoga, and I can't wait to dive in with you. The first day, the quote starts out as, "Do not aim low, you will miss the mark. Aim high and you'll be on a threshold of bliss." So running is difficult. It's a fascinating experience, and for me, it's very liberating. I love running. But when I started running at a young age, I ran with awful technique. It was me versus the ground. It's really pounding through every step that I took. And everyone said that I looked like a duck when I ran, and maybe it's more flat-footed, maybe it's especially the lack of upward body mobility when I was running, but part of it was that there's just no fluidity in my arms and my shoulders and my spine. It was very, very rigid as I ran. The other challenge was my contact with the ground, and so runners benefit from minimizing their contact with the ground, and I was basically just stomping it into submission. A coach that I had finally pulled me aside and reframed my understanding of what running should feel like. He said it should feel more like I was flying and along the ground and less like I was fighting against it. And so letting my feet kiss the ground as briefly as possible as they kind of flick me along in whatever path I was going on, around a track or especially on a trail, something like that. Leaning gently into the momentum, because a lot of times I was essentially just neutral. I wasn't leaning back, which is great and very helpful for your joints, but I wasn't really kind of leaning into the momentum as I was going. And that shift in my thinking has pretty quickly doubled my speed while feeling more natural and free while I was running. So something for you to try on your own. Here's a question for you. How can you bring mindfulness and intention to the transitions between your yoga poses, the stuff that happens in between, and really acknowledge the present moment? And I've got 3 ways that you can unpack this for yourself. The first one is conscious movement, really cultivating awareness during pose transitions, not just what pose you're headed to or which one you're coming from, but really awareness of what it feels like in between each step. and focusing on the sensations, the breath, of course, and your alignment. See if you're favoring one side or another. Now, the second of these three ways that you can unpack it for yourself is mindful pauses, really incorporating brief moments of stillness in between poses to really like tune in, check into your body, observe again those sensations, your breath and your alignment, and reset your body and mind before you go into a new position. And the third one is intent-based transitions. So a lot of times, if you're just thinking of the next pose you're getting into, you're not really being intentional about the transition itself. And so infusing purpose and intention into each movement, linking them between your breath and your physical being, like how your body feels within one pose and the other, and really embracing the flow of your practice. And I really experienced this personally. I've been following this program, Yoga with Adriene, her program Center, which is phenomenal. And I'll link that one down below as well that you can check out. And it's really been interesting. There was one called Unwinding, and there was a lot of movement in the shoulders and the hips, which frankly is like just really where my needs are. And so it really resonated well with me. And that movement really was sitting in the transitions between poses and really taking that movement through and around. And it really, unwound me in a way that it made me pay attention to that time in between poses is potentially a place to unwind some of the things that are going on physically, mentally, or spiritually inside of you as you go through your yoga experience. Now, the second day, I was really dwelling on this quote. Yoga is a means to bring harmony to the body, mind, and spirit. Now, growing up, there's a young girl at my school, and this is a heavy story, so let's try to bear with me through this whole experience. And she was diagnosed with leukemia, and it was a shock to our whole community. Especially, it's remarkably different and difficult to understand how bad things can happen to good people, especially innocent children. So I know it's a tough story, but bear with me; it's worth it. Now, we were aware early on that the outlook was bleak. I mean, it's really tough. It was caught late, that kind of thing. And it was a surreal experience, kind of feeling the wave of grief hit the entire community. And it was probably one of the first times I experienced grief as a whole group of people were processing it together. And she was given weeks to live. It was really tragic. And it was very much a path that we were all thrust on all of a sudden together, the whole community. Now, against all odds and medical estimates, she made a miraculous recovery. So this is why it's especially worth really unpacking this experience, and something I still think about today. And I'm happy to report that she's healthy and thriving nearly 20 years later. So whether you believe in a higher power, prayer, cosmic energy, or mind over matter, these anecdotal cases can leave a real lasting impression of hope and awe. And those sorts of feelings, it's hard to manufacture things like real hope and awe and wonder in the world. I think it's important. And when you do get those experiences, it's important to really dive deep into them. But, my question for you is, what are your beliefs about the mind-body connection? And how does yoga help you explore and nurture this connection? So here's 3 ways that I think that you can begin to wrestle with and unpack that question for yourself. The first is a holistic view, really recognizing that the mind and body are interconnected. And this is backed up by science. This is backed up by different religious and spiritual thought. And they're interconnected with thoughts and emotions influencing the physical well-being of people, and vice versa. It's something where if you go into a hospital, there's an emphasis, and more of an emphasis now than there was decades ago, of the emotional and mental well-being of patients and how it directly correlates to their ability to recover. And so this is a fascinating view into really holistically viewing the mind-body connection and exploring that for yourself, really understanding your own. And so that takes us into the second way to unpack this with embodied practices, really utilizing yoga with the asanas, the breath work, the meditation, the routines to deepen your mind-body connection and explore the subtle aspects of yourself. I also experience this with running, but maybe not as profound. I mean, running is a great way for me to physically unwind and get some energy out. And I often am processing things and unwinding things in my mind, really kind of working through different thoughts that I've had or something that I'm wrestling with. And so that's always been a way for me to experience that, also with music. And so obviously I'm very prone to using music as a resource to really unpack mentally what I'm experiencing. But yoga is a way that slows that down. I mean, running and playing drums and making music, they can be very fulfilling, but yoga is so slow and so intentional that I think slow intention is something that I can bring more of into my life, and yoga is a great vehicle for doing that. And then the third way of unpacking your own exploration of your own mind-body connection would be like somatic awareness, developing sensitivity to your physical sensations and using the body as a vehicle for self-discovery, healing, and transformation. And so to unpack this is a real way to really view how you go about those embodied practices, not just doing yoga, but doing it in a way that promotes more self-awareness. And frankly, I think that in society today, we could all use a little bit more self-awareness across the board. So this next day was really focusing on that breath awareness as one of the specific aspects of what we talked about in the previous video, in the previous segment. Yoga is a powerful vehicle for change. As you build strength, you start to believe in your own potential. I swam my first semester in college. It was a club level swim team at a Division I school, so there were definitely athletes of all calibers in the water, and some of them were amazing, great swimmers. And let me be clear, I was on the very bottom of the rankings. I was not a fast swimmer. I enjoyed it, but I was on the bottom. And in all fairness, I joined the swim team for mixed reasons. And it was one of my first social groups as a freshman in college. And overall, I'll always be grateful for what those people taught me and how they helped me really understand how to be a more proficient athlete. One of those lessons was breathing, and it's essential to life. And it is surprisingly easy to mess up, especially with swimming. My primary goal in the pool was to not drown. And that's most people's goal, but trust me, it was pretty prevalent in my mind. The second was to breathe efficiently and consistently. And so this is something I found that was actually a pretty big challenge early on, to relearn how to breathe. And once I got that rhythm down, I really noticed that other techniques in swimming seem to fall in place one by one. And my question for you is, what are some ways that you can deepen your breath awareness during your yoga practice? And how does this affect your overall experience with yoga? Now, there's 3 ways I think that you can explore your own breath awareness and deepening that practice in your own yoga. The first is diaphragm breathing. This is engaging the diaphragm to promote a deep, slow, mindful breath. And that happens like right below your rib cage, right at the top of your gut. And it's expanding your lung capacity and enhancing your relaxation. So, really a good practice is going to focus and help walk through what breathing with your diaphragm feels like. And so the second way to really explore your own breath awareness in your practice is with breath-centric practices, incorporating techniques like alternating nostril breathing, or the skull shining breath, or square breathing is one of my personal favorites, to focus on the breath and its energetic effect. Because as you explore some of these, you'll find that certain types of breathing lead to higher levels of energy, where they're really energizing. You can use this throughout your day, or calming effects. If you really get worked up, this could be a way to explore breathing that can help calm you down. And so this is something that's very, very interesting, a great tool to have and something to explore for yourself. Now, the third would be the breath-body connection, observing the impact of breath on the physical sensations, mental states, and your emotional well-being. It's all about cultivating a deeper understanding of your breath, mind, body connection, how all 3 of those kind of work in concert with one another. And it can be very harmonious, like a good chord. I'm a big fan of music. Or it can be very discordant, and you can have a lot of dissonance in your mind, body, breath connection. I think you can see that in some people whose breath and their mind and their body. If you picture someone who's in a blind rage, their blood pressure's high, their face is red, they're breathing heavy, they're clearly not thinking straight. And that's maybe a great example and an unfortunate example of how this can really work against each other and work in a non-harmonious way. But for you, really explore your breath awareness and see how it can show up in other parts of your life throughout your day and really explore those benefits. The next quote that was really on my mind for the next day was, "Yoga is a journey of the self, through the self and to the self." At first I thought, man, this sounds like one of those esoteric ones, but really it started to make me reflect on my later years in my early 20s. In college, I studied music. And it's pretty evident from my background here, not just music. I've got a bachelor's degree in drum set, which is very cool and very difficult to make a living and support a family. So part of the full experience of a music major in college, a class called sight singing. Okay, and sight singing is what it sounds like. You're presented with a melody and you have to sing it without preparation. It's just written out in music notation and you just sing it on sight. And this class was, in a word, crippling and intimidating for me at the very beginning. Sight reading and singing on their own have always been a challenge for me. Combining them and performing alone in front of my peers was a major challenge to overcome. I can feel my heart rate get up like 5 beats just thinking back on how stressful it was. But in the end, being honest with myself about my own shortcomings when it came to my vocal work and my ability to sight read music, and working extra hard to make up that difference, with a great deal of support from professors and peers, it really empowered me to eventually pass the class and to frankly enjoy the process by the end of it. Now, how does yoga encourage you to embrace and accept yourself fully, including your strengths and your limitations? And so here's 3 ways that I really think you can help unpack for yourself and reflect on your own strengths and limitations, and encouraging you to embrace yourself in all aspects. The first one is self-compassion. And it may seem obvious, but it's something that I think that we could all use a lot more of. And that's developing kindness and understanding towards oneself and embracing those imperfections, practicing self-care without judgment. And so this is one where self-compassion is one we're always our biggest critics, and I think it's one where if we can really explore and practice self-compassion on the mat with our own shortcomings and limitations, then we'll be better equipped to do it off the mat as well. And that goes for all 3 of these. So for the second one, it's about non-comparison. And comparison, as we all know, is the thief of joy. And letting go the need to compare oneself to others and focusing on personal progress, growth, and individuality can really help with your innate need to compare yourself to others and to focus on how your limitations and shortcomings may not be showing up in other people's lives in a noticeable way. So the third one would be growth mindset. And this is one that I personally love. And it's embracing the challenges and setbacks as opportunities for learning and self-discovery, cultivating resilience and self-empowerment. And so that resilience, that true strength that comes from within, is something that is kind of the core reason why I want to go through these challenges every 4 weeks. Every 4 weeks is a new topic. And the core goal is to make us all healthier, wealthier, and wiser through this process. So you can follow me at my website, dfbradley.com, or subscribe here, because every day, every week, every month, I'm really diving into a specific topic to cultivate resilience and self-empowerment through these specific topics, themes, channels, all these examples. Now, this next day, I was really focusing on this quote that dove specifically into your yoga practice with compassion and love, and some of these themes that are core to yoga's principle and philosophy. The quote, "Yoga teaches us to cure what need not be endured and to endure what cannot be cured." And I briefly mentioned some of the areas in our world that seem to be cognitively destructive. It seems to me that politics, especially in the United States where I am, is increasingly dysfunctional, with its primary contribution to society being division. So politics in the US, incredibly divisive. It also feels like people are more hesitant to commit to shared social experiences, whether it's a trip or a lunch or simply a birthday party, especially after quarantine. I don't know what the deal is, but we've got our son's birthday coming up in just a few days, and so few people have RSVP'd for it. And I know we've talked to people say, oh, I can't wait, all this kind of stuff, but just like the verbal commitment to show up seems to be waning with people in general. And it appears that online discourse and social media especially has continued to develop into just a toxic space where people feel relief when they even spend a weekend unplugged. And I know I experienced that with last month with this digital detox that I experienced. I spent a whole month away from social media and had a phone that didn't connect to the internet and all these things I mentioned earlier. And that month, you can go and see how my experience progressed from hesitancy to curiosity to contentment to, if anything, nervousness coming out of that experience, going back into a world where I had to felt like I had to be exposed to, all this negative, toxic communities online that don't really bring me up. They just tear me down. So here is a question for you to reflect on in this context. In this world we live in, how can you infuse your yoga practice with self-compassion and self-love? And here's 3 ways that I think that you can reflect on that for yourself, unpack these concepts of self-compassion and self-love in a way that hopefully can translate off the mat as much as on it. And so the first one is a gentle approach, really honoring the body's needs and limitations, and in your yoga practice, infusing it with kindness and self-observation, just being aware of oneself and what the needs are in that given moment, not just in general, but moment to moment. Where are your needs? And not pushing yourself too far, but having a gentle approach. And so the second aspect that you can help unpack compassion and love in your practice would be self-care rituals, and integrating self-care practices like massage, relaxation techniques, nourishing rituals, mantras, all these kind of things that enhance your self-compassion and how you can nurture yourself. And if you really look, let's think about on a schedule, like a calendar, all the hours of the day. If you were to break it down, how much time in those hour increments do you spend taking care of yourself? Now, some of you, it may be a lot. You may spend most of your time taking care of yourself. If you're like me and you're married with kids, that time is marginal at best. There's a thin sliver amount of time where you're really taking care of yourself and in really practicing self-compassion and self-nurturing. And so it seems like, oh, well, I'm supposed to be living for others and outside of myself, and I can't really spend so much time just worrying about my own needs. I got to worry about the needs of others. Well, maybe taking care of someone else really starts with taking care of yourself and making sure that you are in the best place to provide and pour out for others. And so the third way that I think that you can really unpack compassion and love in your practice is through positive affirmations. And that's cultivating a positive inner dialogue. And I'm not just talking about just patting yourself on the back every once in a while, but really confronting that internal voice that is so critical of yourself, because we're all our greatest critics, especially on the inside. And really specifically using affirmations, being intentional about it, and incorporating that into your yoga practice to reinforce your self-worth and self-love during that practice. And so this is something that I think Yoga with Adriene that I've been following. You can check out down below the practice that I've been doing in her 30-day center sessions. It's like one a day that I've been following as a part of this reflection and process. I've really found that those are specifically really have quality affirmations woven into them. And so if there is a mantra that she says, it's very self-affirming in a way that is not necessarily something that I would tell myself off the cuff one day, but something that I think is important and I really gain a lot from when I come off the mat and after experiencing those with that practice. And so I encourage you to do the same and really try these out, not in a way that seems cheesy, but in a way that is probably something that you may not realize you've been lacking in your day-to-day life. Now, this next day was all about some of the principles of balance and harmony. And so I love harmony, and I feel like I'm really have a good handle on that. But when it comes to balance, this may be one of my biggest growth areas. So to start out, here's the quote: "The success of yoga does not lie in the ability to perform postures, but how it positively changes the way we live our life and our relationships." Like many people out there, my day job is a desk job. You see me here at it now. And I've worked in many different industries throughout my time. My first job was at a climbing gym in high school, and that was driven and motivated by lower membership fees, because if I worked there, I got a free membership. In college, I was a resident assistant at an apartment building, and that was for lower rent. Essentially, my motivation was I can get paid to sit here at a desk every once in a while, and my rent is going to be significantly lower. In grad school, I worked at a church, and after that, a nonprofit. And granted, these were lower income. The first was lower fees, then lower rent. This was lower income, but plenty of good memories and good vibes for working at a church and a nonprofit. And now I work in insurance with a much more long-term perspective. And it's definitely something to invest in my ability to have a life that is abundant and abundant for my family as well. And so each of those career choices had a different schedule and a very different work-life balance. And I'm not a believer strongly in work-life being a conflict with one another. I think that people that run away from working hard and doing that hard work, doing hard things, and running away in fear of just living to work versus working to live, end up struggling the most. So if they're caught up always trying to fight themselves over that concept of living to work versus working to live, the conflict itself really takes them away from the ability to enjoy just doing the hard work for that sake and then reaping all the fruit of that labor. And so balance isn't just always about tension. It's often about the release and being able to exist fluidly from work to rest and back again. And so I find balance not just to be the tension in the moment, but really taking a bigger picture perspective of the fluidity from work to rest and trying to balance in the bigger sense of that, resting when needed, working when needing, and vice versa. What are some ways that you can incorporate the principles of balance and harmony in your yoga practice, and how can that translate off the mat into your daily life? And so I think there's 3 ways that you can really dig into these principles of balance and harmony, and here they are now. So the first is balancing poses. This seems obvious, but bear with me, it's pretty good. Exploring yoga poses that require physical balance, fostering stability and mental focus. Because if there's something true about our physical bodies, is that they carry a certain language that I think speaks directly to how we handle our thoughts and emotions. And so just people that physically practice balancing seem to be able to pull themselves out of a situation, either physically or mentally or emotionally, and see the bigger picture. Because often when you're balancing, and if you really focus on falling, you tend to fall. And if you really focus on a bigger picture perspective of how your whole body is flowing in and out of poses and being able to root in wherever you are, that focus and that bigger picture perspective translates so well to the rest of your life off the mat. And so speaking of that specifically, here's the second way I think you can open up your perspective about balance and harmony is in your work-life balance. And so for most of us that have full-time jobs and we work to pay those bills, creating a harmonious integration of work, relationships, self-care, personal pursuits, and making sure that wherever you are, in whatever context, you're able to prioritize self-care and your well-being. And so if you're finding yourself in a career that is in direct conflict with your ability to uphold a certain level of well-being, then I'm the first one to encourage people to start looking elsewhere, because there's a wide world out there and it's not worth suffering day to day to make ends meet. And so for some people, they feel stuck in that. But I think that long term, maybe you're not able to flip the switch today or tomorrow, but you can start heading on a journey in a direction that you can find fulfillment in what you do, and it's not sacrificing your own personal well-being. So that's, I think, is very important when it comes to work-life balance. But if it's just the work is hard and it's difficult and you feel maybe like it takes a lot out of you throughout the day, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's in direct conflict with your own well-being, it could just be taxing, and you're probably experiencing growth in that over time. To like a good hard workout or a good session on the mat, you're walking away from it feeling like, wow, I'm maybe physically tired, but I can sense that if I do this over and over consistently, then I'm going to be stronger and have that resilience, that self-resilience that we're all trying to develop deep within ourselves. And so the third one to really unpack balance and harmony within yourself is through emotional balance. And that's cultivating what I call emotional equilibrium through your mindfulness, your self-awareness, your self-reflection, your practices that promote your emotional quotient, your EQ, not your IQ, your intelligence quotient, but your EQ and your resilience. Because I keep coming back to that, how balance and harmony can thrive in a fertile sort of field of resilience. And so if you're really cultivating something within, kind of picture a farmer and picture yourself as a place like a garden for you to really cultivate and develop. The soil is so important, and that soil, that environment in which you try to plant the plants, if it has a lot of nutrient and it has a lot of care and attention put into it, then those plants are going to be resilient. And so really a lot of it has to do less about your balance and harmony as you struggle throughout day to day, but more, it's not the struggle, it's the context in which you find yourself in. And so sometimes those difficult contexts can yield great fruit, because if you take the care to really work through it, then it's going to build a lot of resilience and strength. But if you are not focused on your own awareness of yourself as you go throughout your day to day, and your balance and your harmony with your work, your life, and your emotions, if those are something that you don't pay attention to, then they often cause you to experience even more struggle than what you otherwise normally would. So for the last day this week, I was focusing more on that harmony aspect, and I started to look outside of myself and my day-to-day routine and started to look into nature, because I found myself in a beautiful space and really wanted to unpack the experience of doing yoga in a new environment. And so the quote, "Yoga is the golden key that unlocks the door to peace, tranquility, and joy." And so this 4-week deep dive journey into yoga has been taking place for me outside as much as I possibly can. I've been doing yoga out in the sun in the morning, really welcoming the day and getting some of that vitamin D and that dopamine hit right from the get-go. I think being outside right in the beginning of your day is a very helpful thing. And it's June, which means cool, crisp mornings and energizing sunrises for me each and every day. And it's been turning up the volume on my experience to take the mat out back in the backyard and really experience it. And then this past weekend, I was able to do it at a lake by a body of water. And I think there's something really sacred about being around a large amount of water, whether it be a river, a lake, or an ocean. And so these are all different ways that there's a simple way to take the connection of nature and take it from the outside and bring that connection internally into your space. So I'm a huge fan of houseplants. As you can see, I probably have like a dozen in this room just right here. And like many millennials, I've accumulated many of them over the years. Even if you can't keep anything alive, a small succulent on your desk can really add an element of life into your daily space. And then if you can, getting out and immersed in nature, going for a hike, sitting in a park, just being near nature, it is quantifiably beneficial to your physical, emotional, and spiritual well-being. So how does yoga inspire you to live in harmony with nature and the environment? So I have 3 ways that you can really dwell and unpack this for yourself. The first is ecological awareness. Cultivating mindfulness and appreciation for nature really starts with recognizing that we're connected to it, that there's an interconnectedness to living beings. And as humans, we have a responsibility to be good stewards of our environment. And so being aware of our connection to nature and really being intentional about engaging with that on a regular basis is so important. And the second really stems from that. It turns into how we make our choices. And so the second way to unpack our harmony with nature would be sustainable choices, making conscious decisions that minimize harm to the environment, such as using obviously like eco-friendly props and products and supporting eco-conscious brands, things like that. It's not just a green tax. It's not just a way for you to like posture yourself and feel better about yourself. It's really about participating in a certain worldview that prioritizes the physical environment around us, because it's so integral to our own physical, emotional, and spiritual well-being that it seems foolish to ignore the needs and the benefits of the nature around us. And so the third goes from our choices to our practice, and that's nature-based practices. Specifically, like I said, taking yoga outside. If you're always doing it in a windowless room, if you're like in a concrete box somewhere, just go outside. Practice in a natural setting. Go for a walk, incorporating elements of nature into your experience, really being able to feel the earth and underneath you and participate there in a way that is just going to be enriching. And then one of the easiest ways is if you can just like face the sun in the morning and participate in this, or even if you just need to sit there and just take it all in just for a minute. I think that 5 minutes in the sun in the morning is going to have such a deep impact with the quality of your life for the rest of the day. It's probably going to be the best 5 minutes that you can spend in any sort of morning routine or life hack kind of thing. I think it's can be boiled down as simply as move your body, get outside, make sure that you're feeding yourself not just with food and water, but you're feeding yourself with the other kind of environmental stimulation that you need to be able to begin the day on the right foot. So that rounds out this, and I wanted to invite you to subscribe, because if you're participating in this yoga experience with me, I'm going to be releasing what July of 2023's theme is going to be, coming up pretty soon in a week. And so go ahead and subscribe here so you can participate in that. You can follow all my stuff and dive deeper at my website, dfbradley.com.